More than 50 years have passed since the Rockford Files first aired, and the men and women who brought that gold Pontiac Firebird and that beachfront trailer to life went through marriages, illnesses, quiet exits, and second acts that no one watching in 1974 could ever have guessed. One of them had already conquered popular music with a Grammy and an Oscar, and would die alone beside a running treadmill 10 days before what would have been his 66th birthday. Another was drafted into the National Basketball Association by the Boston Celtics before he ever spoke a line of dialogue on camera. A third was already the first Latina performer in history to win an EGOT, and then went ahead and won yet another Emmy for a single episode of this show. And the star of the show himself walked away from the role at the height of his fame, because his own body could not take one more of the stunts he insisted on doing himself. When Isaac Hayes appeared as Gandalf Gandy Fitch on The Rockford Files in January 1976, he was one of the most famous men in American music. He was 33 years old, and the role, an intimidating, short-tempered former cellmate of Jim Rockford, who calls the hero Rockfish and drags him into unfinished business from prison, was a striking piece of casting, because the man playing that ex-convict was, at that moment, an Academy Award winner, a 3-time Grammy winner, and one of the defining architects of modern soul music. Isaac Lee Hayes Jr. was born on August 20th, 1942, in Covington, Tennessee, in a tin roof shack with no electricity. His mother died when he was very small, and his father abandoned the family shortly after. He was raised by his maternal grandparents in poverty so severe that in the winter he sometimes went to school barefoot, and other children mocked him for it. Music was everywhere in the churches of the Mississippi Delta, and by the time Isaac was in high school, he was playing piano and saxophone entirely by ear, quietly assembling a musical vocabulary that would soon reshape American radio. He joined the legendary Stax Records in Memphis in the early 1960s. With his songwriting partner David Porter, he wrote "Hold On, I'm Comin'" and "Soul Man" for Sam and Dave, transforming the sound of Southern soul. But it was 1971 that changed everything. That year, Hayes composed the score for a low-budget crime film called Shaft, and the pulsing wah-wah guitar-driven theme from Shaft won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, making Isaac Hayes the first black composer ever to win an Oscar in that category. It also won 2 Grammys and became one of the most recognizable pieces of music ever recorded for the screen. Hayes appeared as Gandy Fitch 3 times on The Rockford Files, and the interplay between him and James Garner was genuine, sparky, funny, occasionally quite dangerous. From there, he moved through Hollywood at his own pace, appearing in Truck Turner, John Carpenter's Escape from New York, I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, and eventually finding an entirely new generation of fans as the voice of Chef on South Park from 1997 to 2006. His personal life was less orderly. 4 marriages, 12 children, and periods of profound financial trouble. He filed for bankruptcy in 1976, despite having earned tens of millions of dollars, the victim of terrible business advice and a punishing recording contract. But those who worked with him always described a warm, generous, disarmingly humble man. On August 10, 2008, Isaac Hayes was found unconscious next to a running treadmill at his home outside Memphis. He died at Baptist Memorial Hospital that afternoon at the age of 65, 10 days before his 66th birthday. Even now, when the first bars of Theme from Shaft start playing, entire rooms turn their heads. That was Isaac Hayes. Some faces in American film are so distinctive that once you have seen them, they attach themselves permanently to a mood. A particular kind of dangerous Southern charm, a slow grin that means somebody is about to get into trouble. Bo Hopkins was one of those faces. When Gretchen Corbett departed The Rockford Files at the end of the 4th season in 1978, the producers turned to Hopkins to play the disbarred, hard-drinking, roguish attorney John Coop Cooper. He was 40 years old when he joined the show, and he had already lived enough life to fill several careers. William Malden Hopkins was born on February 2, 1938, in Greenville, South Carolina. He was adopted at 9 months old and raised by his mother and grandmother after his adoptive father died when Bo was only 9. At 16, he lied about his age and enlisted in the United States Army. He served his hitch, came home, and pointed himself at Los Angeles. His breakthrough came in 1969 in Sam Peckinpah's landmark western, The Wild Bunch. Hopkins played Clarence Crazy Lee, the manic young outlaw who dies memorably early in the film's astonishing opening sequence. Peckinpah used him again in The Getaway in 1972 and The Killer Elite in 1975. In 1973, Hopkins was one of the ensemble in George Lucas's American Graffiti, playing the leader of the Pharaohs gang, cementing him in the memory of a generation of moviegoers. He worked constantly through the 1970s in films like Midnight Express and White Lightning. When Rockford cast him, it was an inspired match. Hopkins brought exactly the right blend of comic charm and low-grade menace to Coop, a lawyer who was one bad decision away from being a client. That success carried him directly onto another era-defining project. In 1981, he joined the first season of Dynasty as Matthew Bladel, the wildcatter husband of Crystal, who becomes tangled in the Carrington saga, and he continued to appear in the role through 1987. He kept working steadily right into the modern era, appearing in Oliver Stone's U-Turn in 1997 and, in one final Hollywood act of grace, appearing in his old American Graffiti co-star Ron Howard's Hillbilly Elegy in 2020. He settled with his wife Cian for the last 33 years of his life. On May 9, 2022, Bo Hopkins suffered a massive heart attack. He fought for 19 days at Valley Presbyterian Hospital in Van Nuys, California, but never fully recovered. He died on May 28, 2022, at the age of 84. For more than 5 decades, that slow Southern grin was part of the furniture of American entertainment. Some coincidences are too strange to ignore. When The Rockford Files premiered on the evening of September 13, 1974, a slightly built, quick-eyed character actor named Joe E. Tata was celebrating a birthday, because September 13th was Tata's actual birthday. He was turning 38 years old that very day, and he would spend the next 4 seasons popping up in 8 episodes as bail bondsman Solly Marshall, as well as a small gallery of other minor characters, including a hood, a hitman, and an FBI agent. Joseph Evan Tata was born on September 13, 1936, in the Bronx borough of New York City. His father, John Lucas, had been a vaudeville performer known professionally as Rosie the Singing Barber. The old show business tradition was in the family, and Joseph never really considered anything else. He served in the military, made his on-screen debut on an episode of Peter Gunn in 1960, and then simply worked. He worked constantly. Between 1963 and 1990, if you sat down in front of an American television set for any sustained period, you saw Joe E. Tata's face without necessarily knowing his name. He specialized in henchmen. On the campy 1966 Batman series, he holds what may be an unofficial record. He played goons in service of 3 different supervillains, appearing across storylines for the Riddler, the Penguin, and King Tut. He turned up on The Time Tunnel, Lost in Space, Mission Impossible, Mannix, Police Story, Hill Street Blues, and The A-Team. He was one of the finest journeyman character actors of his generation. In interviews, he always said James Garner had been his favorite co-star. Then, in 1990, at the age of 53, when many actors of his generation were already easing into retirement, Joe E. Tata was cast as Nat Busicchio, the warm-hearted owner of the Peach Pit Diner, on a new teen drama called Beverly Hills 90210. He would play Nat across all 10 seasons of the original series, and then reprise the role in the CW spin-off 90210 from 2008 to 2013. For an entire generation of viewers who never knew the character actor from the 1970s crime dramas, he became the sweet, patient, unshakably decent presence behind the counter of the most famous fictional diner in America. In 2018, Tata was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. His daughter Kelly established a GoFundMe page to help cover the cost of his care at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. Joe E. Tata died there on the night of August 24th, 2022, at the age of 85. His 90210 castmate Ian Ziering wrote afterward that Tata had been one of the happiest people he had ever worked with. From a birthday shared with a series premiere to a role that made him one of the most familiar diner owners in television history, his career was, quietly, a small marvel of persistence. She appeared in only 3 episodes of The Rockford Files, but they became some of the most acclaimed of the show's entire run. Rita Moreno's portrayal of Rita Kapkovich, a lonely, streetwise sex worker with a hunger for genuine friendship, was so extraordinary that she won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a drama for a single appearance for her first episode. She was 46 years old when she filmed it, and by that point, she was already one of the most decorated performers in the world. Rosa Dolores Alverio Marcano was born on December 11, 1931, in the small mountain town of Humacao, Puerto Rico. When she was 5 years old, her mother took her to New York City in search of a better life. They settled in the Bronx in poverty, and young Rosita, who spoke no English, was placed into a school system that had no interest in helping her keep up. What she had was dance. She had rhythm and command, and by the age of 13 she was performing at nightclubs in Greenwich Village. At 16 she made her Broadway debut. By 18 she had signed with MGM. Her early Hollywood years were painful. She was cast repeatedly in what she later described as stereotype roles she detested, but could not afford to refuse. Everything changed in 1961, when Robert Wise cast her as Anita in the film version of West Side Story. Her performance was electrifying, furious, tender, physically astonishing. She won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, becoming the first Latina ever to win an Oscar. A Grammy followed in 1972 for her work on the Electric Company album. A Tony followed in 1975 for the Broadway production of Terrence McNally's The Ritz. An Emmy followed in 1977 for a guest appearance on The Muppet Show. And with that award, Rita Moreno became the 3rd performer and the first Latina ever to complete an EGOT. Then, in September 1978, at the age of 46, she won her 2nd Emmy for The Rockford Files. Her friendship with James Garner had begun decades earlier. The two had appeared together in the 1969 film Marlowe, and the chemistry between them in her 3 Rockford appearances was palpable and utterly earned. All 3 episodes were written by Juanita Bartlett, one of the great female voices behind the show. Rita Moreno never stopped. Across the following decades, she starred in Norman Lear's Netflix reboot of One Day at a Time, voiced Aunt Mimi in Rio 2, and reprised a version of her Anita role for Steven Spielberg's 2021 West Side Story. She has been honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the National Medal of Arts, and a Kennedy Center honor. She married Dr. Leonard Gordon in 1965. The marriage lasted 45 years until his death in 2010. In 2026, Rita Moreno is 94 years old, still based in Berkeley, California, still making public appearances, still funny and unfiltered in interviews. Very few people in any generation have lived a life like hers. Before he became one of the most beloved cult horror actors in American cinema, before John Carpenter made him a permanent fixture in the memory of every fan of The Fog and Halloween 3, Tom Atkins was one of Jim Rockford's earliest antagonists inside the Los Angeles Police Department. He appeared as Lieutenant Alex Diehl in the 1st and 2nd seasons of The Rockford Files, across 8 episodes, playing the kind of stone-faced, weary, faintly annoyed detective that would eventually become his professional signature. He was 38 years old when the show premiered, and everything ahead of him was still waiting to happen. Thomas Atkins was born on November 13, 1935, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His father worked in a steel mill, and in the family's mind, that was the future waiting for Tom as well. He served in the United States Navy, and it was there, watching the officers eat better food and live in better quarters, that he understood the education gap between where he was and where he wanted to be. He used his benefits to enroll at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh and studied acting. He was on Broadway by the early 1970s, winning a Drama Desk Award for Most Promising Performer in 1973 for The Changing Room. He made his film debut in Gordon Douglas's The Detective in 1968, playing a rookie officer opposite Frank Sinatra. It was the first of dozens of police roles across his career, but it was his relationship with John Carpenter that gave Tom Atkins the career for which he is now most cherished. In Carpenter's ghost story, The Fog, in 1980, Atkins played Nick Castle, a fisherman drawn into small-town horror. In Escape from New York in 1981, he played Raim, the government official who watches a very tense clock tick down beside Kurt Russell. In 1982, he starred as Dr. Daniel Chalice in Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, an unusual entry in the Halloween franchise that was widely dismissed at the time and has since been reclaimed as a cult masterpiece. In 1986, he played Detective Ray Cameron in Fred Decker's Night of the Creeps, a performance so beloved by horror fans that Atkins himself named it his personal favorite. Then came Maniac Cop, Lethal Weapon, and years of steady character work. He married Janice Lee Rogers in 1986, and they had a son together, Taylor. Atkins settled in Peters Township, Washington County, Pennsylvania, refusing throughout his career to abandon Pittsburgh for Los Angeles. He continued to work in theater at the Pittsburgh Public Theater right into old age, particularly in the acclaimed one-man show, The Chief, in which he portrayed Pittsburgh Steelers founder Art Rooney. In 2026, Tom Atkins is 90 years old and will turn 91 on November 13th. The rookie officer who once tangled with Jim Rockford in the LAPD interrogation room has become one of the most cherished elder statesmen of American horror. Almost every great detective on American television has needed a superior officer to argue with. A police brass antagonist who could not stand him, but who could not, in the end, quite get rid of him. For Jim Rockford, that officer was Lieutenant Doug Chapman, and the man who played him for the show's final 4 seasons had, before he ever set foot on a soundstage, been drafted into the National Basketball Association by the Boston Celtics. James Luisi was 47 years old when he joined the cast in 1976, and no other actor on this show had lived quite the life he had lived. James Anthony Luisi was born on November 2, 1928, in the East Harlem section of Manhattan. He grew tall and athletic in the working-class Italian-American neighborhood, and by his teenage years, he had become one of the finest schoolboy basketball players in the New York area. He attended St. Francis College in Brooklyn on a basketball scholarship. In 1951, the Boston Celtics drafted him in the 6th round of the NBA draft. Before he could play professionally, however, the United States Army needed him for the Korean War. When he finally returned, he played 31 games in the 1953 to 1954 season with the Baltimore Bullets, averaging 3 points per game as a 6'2" guard. That was the entirety of his professional basketball career. He might have gone home and settled into ordinary life. Instead, he enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and began an entirely new career. He appeared on Broadway in the original 1966 Bob Fosse production of Sweet Charity and in Alfie. His television work followed the natural path for a large, imposing, physically commanding actor. He played detectives, mobsters, and military officers on shows like Naked City, Kojak, and Barnaby Jones. In 1976, he shared a Daytime Emmy Award for his portrayal of George Washington in a special called First Lady's Diaries, Martha Washington, a genuinely surprising piece of casting that showcased his range. That same year, he was hired to play Lieutenant Doug Chapman on the Rockford Files, and he would appear in 23 episodes across the 3rd through 6th seasons. Chapman detested Rockford. He was constantly furious, and Luisi played him with a barely controlled apoplexy that made him instantly memorable, and often very funny. He appeared in Martin Ritt's Oscar-nominated Norma Ray opposite Sally Field in 1979, and in Bob Fosse's harrowing Star 80 in 1983, Fosse's final film. He married Georgia Phillips in 1961, and they remained together for 41 years. In the late 1990s, James Luisi was diagnosed with cancer. He fought it as long as he could. He died on June 7, 2002, in Los Angeles at the age of 73. The basketball player who had once been drafted by the Celtics had become one of the most watchable second bananas in the history of the American detective show. Very few careers travel a route quite that unlikely. She was the moral center of the show. Every time Jim Rockford got himself into a legal or physical corner, every time he needed the sober, exhausted counsel of someone who actually cared what happened to him, he called Beth Davenport. Gretchen Corbett played her across the first 4 seasons of The Rockford Files in 33 episodes and gave the role a warmth and intelligence that has been remembered by fans ever since. She was 29 years old when the show began, and she came from a background that was very unlike anything else on this cast. Gretchen Corbett was born on August 13, 1945, in Camp Sherman, Oregon, into one of the founding families of the American Pacific Northwest. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Henry Winslow Corbett, a United States Senator from Oregon, and one of the leading businessmen in the development of Portland during the 19th century. His investments had built banks, railroads, insurance companies, and stagecoach lines across the region. And yet, young Gretchen was drawn irresistibly toward the theater. She trained at Pittsburgh's Carnegie Tech before its merger into what would become Carnegie Mellon University in 1967. She spent her early career on the New York stage and earned cult status in the 1971 low-budget horror film, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. She joined the Rockford Files in 1974 as part of the original ensemble, and her Beth Davenport quickly became one of the most fully realized lawyers ever put on television. In real life, Gretchen Corbett left the series in 1978 at the end of the 4th season. After a contract dispute with the producers, she continued to work in guest television roles, but made a conscious choice to prioritize theater and family over the Los Angeles television grind. She returned to Oregon and became a fixture of the Portland regional theater community, both as a performer and eventually as a director. She reprised her role as Beth Davenport in 3 of the Rockford Files reunion television movies in the 1990s. In 2013, she took on a recurring role on the IFC comedy series Portlandia, which introduced her to a completely new generation. Her most recent screen appearance came in the Hulu series Shrill in 2019, and she continues to direct at Portland Center Stage. Her daughter, Winslow Corbett, is also an actress. Today, in 2026, Gretchen Corbett is 80 years old, still based in Portland, and still occasionally on the stage. A working artist who never lost the values she brought to Beth Davenport all those years ago. Every great American detective show has needed a great weasel, somebody untrustworthy, somebody selfish, somebody whose loyalty extends only as far as his own next scheme, and yet somebody the hero cannot bring himself to abandon. On The Rockford Files, that weasel was Evelyn Angel Martin, and the man who played him, Stuart Margolin, won 2 consecutive Emmys for the role. Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series in 1979 and 1980, and became, for millions of viewers, the most memorable con man in the history of American television. He was 34 years old when the show began. Stuart Margolin was born on January 31st, 1940, in Davenport, Iowa. His family moved to Dallas, Texas, while he was still very young, and his father established a successful lighting wholesale business. Young Stuart, however, was not a good student. He was expelled from several schools before his family placed him in private school after his removal from Hillcrest High School in 1955. What he lacked in academic patience, he made up for in obvious talent. At a Colorado summer theater camp in his teens, he was mentored by Barney Brown, an acting teacher who had also worked with Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. He moved to Los Angeles and began working almost immediately. He appeared repeatedly on the anthology series Love, American Style, and it was there that James Garner first noticed him. When Garner was casting his short-lived NBC Western Nichols in 1971, he needed a shifty, scheming deputy, someone who could be a rat and yet remain lovable. Margolin was hired. The 2 men formed one of the great actor friendships of American television. When Stephen Cannell and Roy Huggins built the Rockford Files around Garner 3 years later, they brought Margolin with them. Angel Martin was born. He was pathologically dishonest. He was a coward. He would sell out anyone at any moment for any small advantage. And Stuart Margolin played him with such a peculiar, twitchy, deeply human energy that he became not only tolerable, but genuinely loved. "There's something lovable about him," Garner wrote in his memoir. "I don't know what it is, but it's all Stuart's doing." Margolin was also, quietly, one of the most prolific television directors of his era. He directed episodes of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Love Boat, Magnum, P.I., Northern Exposure, and, naturally, The Rockford Files itself. He appeared in Charles Bronson's Death Wish and in Clint Eastwood's Kelly's Heroes. He married Patricia Dunn in 1982. The marriage lasted for 40 years and gave him 3 beloved stepchildren, including the actor Max Martini and the director Christopher Martini. On December 12, 2022, Stuart Margolin died of natural causes at a hospice center in Staunton, Virginia, at the age of 82. The greatest weasel in television history had, in real life, been anything but. Every private detective needs a friend inside the police department, somebody who quietly slides him the case file, somebody who tells him to walk away and then, when he doesn't walk away, backs him up anyway. For Jim Rockford, that friend was Dennis Becker. Joe Santos played him across 112 of the show's episodes and made him one of the most beloved supporting characters in 70s television. He was 43 years old when the show began. And behind him lay a story that began, quite literally, on the day of his own birth. Joseph John Beery Jr. was born on June 9, 1931, in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York, on the very same day that his father died. He was raised by his mother Rose, a woman of considerable enterprise who sold olive oil and eventually opened her own nightclubs in Manhattan and later in Havana. Young Joe grew up in a family of longshoremen and neighborhood characters, and the working-class Brooklyn diction he never lost became part of his professional signature. He attended Fordham University on a football scholarship before transferring to Miami University. His break into acting came through the person he later called his most important friend in the industry, Al Pacino. The two men had played softball together, and when Pacino was cast as the lead of the wrenching heroin drama The Panic in Needle Park in 1971, he lobbied for Santos to be given a substantial role. From there, Santos worked constantly. He appeared in Shaft's Big Score, The Friends of Eddie Coyle, and The Blue Knight. By the time the Rockford Files began production in 1974, he was one of the most reliable working character actors in Los Angeles. Becker was his greatest role. He and James Garner played their long-suffering television friendship as though it were real, mutually irritating, mutually essential, mutually complicit. Santos earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series in 1979. When Becker was promoted to lieutenant in the 5th season, the audience felt it as a small victory. Santos reprised the role in all 8 of the Rockford Files reunion television movies produced through the 1990s. After the show ended, he continued to work in a similar niche. He played police lieutenants on Hardcastle and McCormick and Magnum, P.I., and in 2004 appeared in 7 episodes of The Sopranos as the mob consigliere Angelo Garepa. His marriage to Maria Montero, who bore him 3 children, lasted from 1958 until her death in 1988. On March 14, 2016, at his home in Los Angeles, Joe Santos suffered a serious heart attack. He died 4 days later, on March 18, 2016, at the age of 84. James Garner had died 2 years earlier. The odd couple was gone, but the friendship they had built together on screen remains one of the finest in the entire history of American television. He was Hollywood royalty by birth. When Noah Beery Jr. joined the Rockford Files in 1974 as Jim's warm-hearted retired truck driver father, Joseph Rocky Rockford, he brought with him a family name that went back to the very foundations of American motion pictures. He was 61 years old when the show began. His father had been a major silent film actor. His uncle had been the highest-paid film actor in the world in 1932. And by the time the Rockford pilot was being cast, Beery himself had already spent more than 50 years in front of a camera. Noah Lindsay Beery Jr. was born on August 10, 1913, in New York City, where his father Noah Beery Sr. was performing on the stage. His paternal uncle Wallace Beery would go on to win an Academy Award and become, at the height of his fame, the highest-paid actor in Hollywood. Young Noah, called Pidge from childhood, made his screen debut at the age of 7, appearing with his father in the 1920 Douglas Fairbanks film, The Mark of Zorro. He grew up on horseback on a ranch in the San Fernando Valley, attended the Harvard Military Academy, and settled into a decades-long career playing amiable second leads and warm supporting parts, particularly in westerns. He was John Wayne's sidekick in the 1934 film, The Trail Beyond, and in Howard Hawks' masterpiece Red River in 1948, a film he later said was his own favorite among his more than 100 credits. Then, in 1974, he was cast as Rocky Rockford. He was the second actor to play the role. Robert Donnelly had played Rocky in the pilot movie, But from the first scene, nobody could imagine anyone else in the part. Beery was only 15 years older than James Garner, and yet he played the father-son relationship with such warmth and lived-in ease that viewers accepted it without a second's hesitation. Rocky was ranked 45th in TV Guide's list of the 50 greatest television dads of all time in 2004. Beery was nominated for the Emmy Award 3 times for the role. He married twice. His first marriage, from 1940 to 1966, was to Maxine Jones, the only daughter of the Western star Buck Jones, and produced a son, the actor Buckland Beery, and 2 daughters, Muffet and Melissa. His second marriage to Bobby Lucille, Lisa Thorman, lasted from 1968 until his death. On February 8, 1960, he was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In the mid-1980s, he suffered a stroke that limited his final years. He died on November 1, 1994, at his ranch 80 miles north of Los Angeles, in Tehachapi, California, of a cerebral thrombosis. He was 81 years old. 3 generations of the Beery family had lived and worked in Hollywood, and none of them had ever done anything with more evident love than Noah Jr.'s portrayal of Rocky Rockford, and finally, him. There is really no way to talk about the Rockford Files without acknowledging that the entire show existed because of the personality of one man. James Garner did not simply play Jim Rockford, he was Jim Rockford. The wry good humor, the resigned world weariness, the practical intelligence about people, the willingness to take a punch and roll with it. These were not performances. These were, by every account of every person who worked with him, exactly who James Garner was. He was 46 years old when the show began, and he had already lived one full career. James Scott Bumgarner was born on April 7, 1928, in Norman, Oklahoma. His mother, who was of half Cherokee ancestry, died when he was 4 years old, and his father remarried a woman who turned violently abusive. At 14, after one final beating, James left home for good. He drifted to Los Angeles, where his father was then living, and briefly attended Hollywood High School before returning to Norman. He never graduated. In 1950, he was drafted into the Korean War, where he served with the United States Army and was wounded twice, earning 2 Purple Hearts. Back home, working as a carpet layer in Los Angeles, he ran into an old school acquaintance who would become a Hollywood agent. That chance encounter changed his life. He was cast in 1957 as Brett Maverick, one of the 2 Maverick brothers on the new ABC Western, Maverick, the card sharp, who would rather slip out the back door than get into a gunfight. The show became one of the biggest hits on American television, and Garner became a star. He left after 3 seasons in a bitter contract dispute with Warner Brothers, a legal battle he ultimately won, one of the first actors of the studio era to successfully take on a major studio and prevail. From there, he moved into film, appearing in The Great Escape, The Americanization of Emily, his own favorite of his films, Grand Prix, and Support Your Local Sheriff. By 1974, he was ready to return to television. The Rockford Files was built specifically for him by Roy Huggins and Stephen J. Cannell. He inhabited the role for 123 episodes across 6 seasons, from 1974 through 1980, and won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series in 1977. Behind the scenes, he did his own driving stunts, sometimes elaborate ones, and by the end of the 6th season, his body simply could not take any more. He walked away from the show in the middle of what would have been the 7th season, citing exhaustion and injuries. He also sued Universal Studios over his share of the show's profits, and, once again, he won. The James Garner who wrote his memoir, The Garner Files, in 2011, was clear-eyed about the industry and completely without illusion. He continued to work when the material was good. He earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for the 1985 film Murphy's Romance, opposite Sally Field. He appeared in Victor Victoria, The Notebook, Space Cowboys, and, after the sudden death of John Ritter in 2003, took on a warm, recurring role on the ABC sitcom 8 Simple Rules. He married Lois Clark on August 17, 1956, 58 years of partnership. In 2008, he suffered a stroke, from which he never fully recovered. On July 19, 2014, James Garner was found dead of natural causes at his home in Brentwood, California. He was 86 years old. Every generation of American television has produced one or two performers who make it look effortless. James Garner was the finest of those. There it is. An entire world that existed just behind the cameras of the Rockford Files. Quiet exits and long marriages. Deaths that came too soon, and lives that stretched into a stunning fifth decade after the cameras stopped rolling. Grammy winners and Oscar winners and Emmy winners. Hollywood royalty and small-town Southern boys and Brooklyn kids and Puerto Rican immigrants. But all of them are part of one story, a story about how 6 seasons of a single detective show could gather so many different lives into one shared work, and about how a single character, played with such absolute honesty by James Garner, could keep every one of those lives alive in the memory of a generation of viewers, more than 50 years after the pilot first aired. So, tell us in the comments, which of these actors was your personal favorite? Who was the one who made the Rockford Files indispensable for you? Was it James Garner as Jim himself? Was it Noah Beery Jr.'s warmth as Rocky? Was it Stuart Margolin's Angel, the greatest weasel in television history? Was it Rita Moreno, Isaac Hayes, or the great Joe Santos as Dennis Becker? We want to hear from every single viewer. If you want to keep finding the real stories behind the classic shows and the people who created them, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell. Every week, we go past the legend and into the life.